Hey guys, welcome back to Heart Breathings. We have been discussing how to plot your novel, and now that we are all the way at the end, I thought I would just add one more video to discuss what happens if you get stuck. Now, trust me when I say that there have been so many times in my career that I have had this very beautiful plot outline and everything seems like it's going great and the story is just going to practically write itself because it's so wonderfully done. And then I'll get, 10, 20,000 words into it, well into the second act or whatever, and suddenly my characters aren't doing what I thought they were going to do. Something in the story is stuck, and sometimes when this happens, I will spend weeks trying to get back on track because I had this great outline and now it's not working. So I wanted to just give you a few tips and tricks that I have learned and things that have worked for me along the way when I'm thinking about how to get the story moving again when something is just stuck or something in my outline is not working. Okay, so one of the things that I love to do, and this is probably one of the most helpful things for me, is I like to talk it out with a friend or with my husband. Just talking it out, even if that person doesn't honestly give a lot of feedback or a lot of great ideas, just somehow getting out of my head and getting words out where I'm like, oh, this, that, this, like I remember being at a writing retreat with my friend Bella not that long ago, and I was trying to work through a story plot point, and it was just like, oh, I couldn't get it. And I was like writing things down and trying. And then I just sat down with a cup of coffee with her and I said, well, maybe what needs to happen is blah, 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 blah. And it was like everything just fell together. And all I needed was to be able to verbalize it and get it out of my head and into, speech. And for some reason, that process just got things moving again. So when you start to feel stuck and you're just not sure where to go next, try talking it out with a friend. Another technique that I often use is I will create a new doc and I'll just call it something like Deceiving Darkness Thoughts. And all I will do is just start typing, like purely stream of consciousness. Like, I know Harper's gone here and here, but what if she did this, or what if she did this? And what I'm really thinking is this. And somehow I think that sometimes when I'm just sitting down and trying to make the story come together in my head and all I'm doing is just imagining, it feels really stuck. So I need action. So whether it's talking it out with someone else or sort of typing and talking it out just to myself, sometimes that can help. So starting a new document and just start, nothing that's going to go into your word count or anything like that, but just something that you're thinking out on paper, stream of consciousness. You can handwrite it or you can type it out, but sometimes just sort of word vomiting onto a page of what could happen, what might happen, what your thoughts are, what's not working. Sometimes that can really help also. Sometimes it helps to not just get active mentally, but also physically, going for a walk, taking a break from just staring at the blank page for a while, and walk around the mall, walk in the beach, walk down around your neighborhood, get on the treadmill, whatever it is you can do easily, get your body moving, because sometimes like doing something like that, sometimes I even will go for a drive because keeping my sort of that one side of my mind occupied, taking a shower, sometimes the best ideas come when I'm taking a shower or going for a walk, something like that. Just getting your body out of the chair and into another environment where you can open up your brain to start working. I have a friend who does puzzles a lot of times when she starts to get stuck because she's good enough at puzzles that they don't occupy enough of her brain space. It's just kind of like going through the motion of the puzzle while she's working through those mental puzzles, the story puzzles in her brain. That doesn't work for me because I am not good enough at actual puzzles, so I have to really focus on them. Sometimes for me what works is even binge watching something on Netflix or YouTube because I know I'm working out that story problem somewhere in the back of my subconscious. But I do find one of the number one things that helps is actually getting up and going for a walk and really just allowing my body to move while I'm thinking through the story problem. Another tactic I like to do is almost like meditative or getting into a trance. I like to sit down somewhere, really just take some deep breaths and start daydreaming about where the story could go as if it was a movie playing in my head. And sometimes it's like if I play the movie up to what has already happened so far in my draft, then then I can suddenly begin to imagine new scenes. And whenever I have an idea for a new scene, even if it's not completely in order of what should come next, I will write down that idea. Because a lot of times when I get into sort of meditation where I'm fully immersed, like no phone, no distractions, no noise, just deep breathing and really thinking about that character and what's going on in the story, then it will allow me to sort of open up this creativity where I can start to envision scenes. And like I said, it doesn't always tell me like, here's what happens next, but it might give me a flash of like Harper going into this room or finding this building or, you know, something that she's doing. And I can see her almost like a movie going into this place and something's happening. And so I'll write that down. And when I start to come out of that meditation, there will be all these ideas, and I can sometimes even start to write the story out of order. That really helps for me. I know it doesn't help for some people. They just can't do that or they don't enjoy doing that. But if I see that scene, if I'm stuck over here, like in Act 1, I'll jump ahead. I have no problem jumping ahead to the end of Act 2 to get that scene on paper, because sometimes just getting the words flowing again will help me figure out what was stuck back in Act 1. So I go into kind of what I would call a meditation or a trance where I'm imagining my story flowing through me as if it were a movie. And whatever scenes pop up, there's no judgment, there's no nothing. It's just, if it's a scene that pops up, I write it down. And when I come out of that state, I either start to actually write that scene, or I start to put it together just like a puzzle piece and say, where could that scene fit in? If that scene happens, does that change anything about where I was stuck? That sort of thing. Hopefully that makes sense. Another tactic that I use often is to go back to the character themselves and do an interview with them. So like I might just sort of start typing out, you know, as if I were someone interviewing Harper. Harper, why in the world are you stuck on this story thing? Why won't you do this thing I asked you to do? And just free flowing her answer. So if I wanted her to, I mean, this is totally just made up, but let's say I wanted her to go into a warehouse and investigate a strange sound or some clue that she found, but I'm just not able to get her there. Something isn't working right. So I'll say, Harper, why don't you want to go into that warehouse? And then I'll start sort of role playing as if I were Harper and start thinking through. And somehow that will unlock something in the back of my mind that I knew was off about the story. So maybe Harper will respond and say, Sarah, you know, I'm not going to go into that warehouse because remember in book 3 when I did such and such and it led to this horrible thing. I'm not going to go do that because that's the dumbest thing I could possibly do. If I got this information about the warehouse, what I really would do is XYZ. And that will start to make me say like, oh, okay, so that's why she doesn't want to do this. This was stupid of me, or this was definitely the wrong direction for me to think she would do it after she's already been in a similar situation or whatever. Hopefully that makes sense. But it's just interviewing that character and going back to their mind and why they may not be like fully down with the story that you plotted out can sometimes help get things moving again. Okay, another tactic that I sometimes use is to write out a list, just a total brainstorm of everything that could still happen in the story. So even if it seems ridiculous, Harper goes to the moon, Harper has an epiphany, or Harper has a vision, or Harper decides to go to the beach to relax and a monster comes out of the sea. I mean, whatever it is, even if it's you're not writing paranormal, just let everything come out of your brain. Say no judgment and set a timer for 20 minutes. I'm going to write down every possible idea of what could happen next. And when you just start letting yourself go and say, okay, I'm going to let anything happen, sometimes that's where like magical things will happen. Sure, you might have written down 15 things and 12 of them were absolutely ridiculous. But if 3 of them start to lead you down the path of where your story really needs to go, then it was a valuable 15-minute exercise. I find it very valuable to actually set a timer on this when I do these brainstorms, or otherwise I just kind of tend to, daydream and let my mind wander. So if I set that timer like 5, 10, 20 minutes, no longer than 20 usually, and say, okay, I'm going to take my pen and I'm going to write down every possible thing that could happen next in this story and just go and let the words flow, just any little thing with no judgment, and I don't let my pen stop moving, usually some kind of idea will come. Okay, my final tip on what to do if you get stuck in your story is don't be afraid to go backward. Sometimes I find that if a story it seems on paper like it should be working, but the words just won't flow, then what I inevitably come to realize is that something I've already written just isn't working. And what hurts me more than anything is not wanting to go back and fix it because I don't want to waste time rewriting. And it ends up being kind of a catch-22 because I don't want to waste time rewriting, but here I am wasting time trying to figure out how to start writing again. So I always tell myself, don't be afraid to go back to the beginning, to say, okay, at the end of Act 1, Harper goes into this warehouse and this is what changes the whole story. What if she decides not to go in the warehouse? It's going to change my entire plot, but what if I take that part out? Sometimes it's the end of the story. Maybe I haven't gotten there yet, but I'm thinking, okay, at the end of this story, there's going to be XYZ huge twist. And so I've been writing everything, trying to push to that ending. So sometimes I have to let go of what I thought would be something really cool at the twist at the end and say, okay, what if that's not the ending? What if I let go of that as the ending? What does that change? So I think sometimes you have to you spent all this time plotting your work. You did all this really good character work and getting every little detail of the plot and every little thing. And it can be so hard to let go of that and say, okay, I'm going to let it go and I'm going to start from scratch. But sometimes that's what you need to do. And so don't look at the work you did before as a waste of time. Choose instead to look at it as this was something that unlocked my potential and the story enough to make me get to this next level. None of the work that you do when you're plotting is a waste of time unless you're just literally doing nothing. Even if you have to let go of something because the story isn't working, it was a stepping stone on the path to the right story. So don't be afraid to go back and change things that you really, really thought would happen. And sometimes when I really look at my plot and for some reason the story is not coming together, it won't write, and I can't figure out what's wrong, I have to go back and look at the things that I thought were absolutes. Like maybe the whole story was plotted and I was like iffy on the details, but I knew at the midpoint X was going to happen. Sometimes holding on to whatever that event was at the midpoint is what's keeping the whole story from flowing. So I have to go back and look at and examine the things that I thought were absolutely going into the story, because sometimes that's what's holding it up. And for some reason, I didn't want to let go of it because I really liked that idea. But the minute I say, okay, fine, she's not going to go into this warehouse, we're going to cut that whole part of the book, what else could happen? That's when the story starts to flow again. So I guess the advice is don't be afraid to let go of things that you thought were certainties in your story or in your story arc. Don't be afraid to deviate from the plan. The plan is really just a way of getting you started. It's a way of organizing and structuring your story. But once you get to writing, it's going to start to take on a life of its own usually. So when you get stuck, the only goal is to just keep finding a way to keep going. Because the worst thing that can happen is that you've done all this work on story, you've started the rough draft, you're going really good, and then you get stuck and you let yourself stop there. It's the absolute worst thing that could happen. Now, sometimes maybe you need a few days to recalibrate, to let your brain think, or you need some time to rest because you've been working too hard, and that's totally fine. Don't let yourself burn out. But do not completely abandon the story for weeks and months on end just because you got stuck. Find a way to get the mental energy going again. Take a walk, talk with a friend. Don't be afraid to let go of plot points that you thought were certainties. Interview your character. Any of these tips that you can get to work to get things going again and to get writing again is going to be valuable, and it will help you finish your story quicker. When you finish the whole rough draft, then you can always go back and make sure that the structure fits. But if you get stuck, don't get so caught up in, but I'm supposed to have an attack here from the antagonist. Don't let story structure hold you back. If you feel intuitively after you've got it structured that something needs to change and that you need to go in a different direction, let your creativity flow and let yourself explore those things. You can always go back and make sure the pacing's right and the story structure fits pretty well, because it's more of a blueprint for before you start your story, or for, kind of making sure that you've built the house in a way that is sturdy. But if you have to change things around a little bit, don't get so caught up in the rules that you can't let go. below. Okay guys, I hope that this video has given you some ideas for what to do if you do get stuck, and I sincerely hope that you have enjoyed this entire series on how to plot your novel. If you have, I hope that you will comment down below and let me know what you thought of it. I also hope that you will head over to heartbreathings.com/plotyournovel and download my free guide. All these worksheets that you've seen me using in these past videos are there for you to download for free, so please go and grab them now. And if you have enjoyed this series, I do hope that you will subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell. Since I am a full-time writer and not a full-time YouTuber, I don't always keep to a set schedule. I try to get videos up on Thursdays and Sundays these days, but sometimes it doesn't happen because writing is my priority. So definitely make sure that you're subscribed and you hit that notification bell so that you will get a notification from YouTube when my next video goes up. All right, and that is all I have for y'all today, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.